Hi, folks. We're Tasteless today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about what is, I think, part of a massive Indian employment visa scam, huge fucking Indian. Now, when you say scam and India in the same sentence, you're not breaking any new ground. This is part of what happens when you do business with a population, a society, and a culture where corruption at all levels, in every imaginable way, is a standard part of their daily and minute by minute existence. You know, they just bring their corrupt practices and attitudes and views, and they view that, this level of corruption as a natural part of life, in the same way that Somalians are doing in the US. So, but this is an employment work visa thing, and it goes like this. And I think it's far bigger than I've stumbled across it by accident. But I was at a meeting a while ago, and it just came up in passing. But it goes like this. So Western companies, businesses, particularly in the better paid white collar jobs, but not just there, mostly there, I think it is. And these are the prized jobs for the Indian Brahmins and so on. This is the jobs they want, prestigious, bragging rights jobs. And also, every Indian is gagging, desperately gagging, writhing on the floor, chewing the toilet seat, gagging to get the fuck out of India and get to the West. And if they any level of corruption, duplicity or whatever they have to do to get to the West, they'll do it without even blinking. So it goes like this. When a job's advertised for a brand name company, a job board, internet job board is advertised. It's a white collar job, well-paying white collar job, paying at least 2 times the average wage and often much more than that. And the jobs advertised in a local job board. It could be in Australia or in Britain or Canada, or, United States, any Western country. They're not doing this in Africa or somewhere, or some dirt poor shithole in fucking Afghanistan. It's only the rich white Western countries that are getting this. So the jobs advertised in the job board, but unbeknownst to the applicants, many of whom will be white, unbeknownst to the applicants, the applications go directly to an Indian company in India that's been subcontracted by the big Western firm, that's primarily run by venture capital firms and that sort of thing that are mainly Jewish financiers there. But it's sent offshore to India, and they process the CVs, the applications that are coming in. Now, you would assume the applications, at least to some extent, would be on the basis of if the job advert on the job board requires 10 years experience at changing light bulbs or whatever. You would expect that as long as you're demonstrating that you have a degree in light bulb changing, this sort of stuff. Is your application germane? And are you working for a company at the moment which is more or less in a similar type of space where you are also doing the light bulb changing? Then you would expect you'd get at least be brought in for an interview, or maybe have an online interview, an online interview rather than a face-to-face interview. So, but that's not what's happening. The Indian CV processing team, application processing team, they're not there to separate, and find the qualified applicants. Far from it. They're there to then go and look in India for people that could fill that job. Now, the pretense is that it's for local applicants in Australia or America, wherever, but that's not what's happening. So once the applications come in, the jobs there, the Indians are already out looking around for Indians who are, on the face of it, are qualified, although that's not their primary concern. They're looking out to allocate the job to relatives. They're looking out for bribes to be paid under the table. They're looking out for all sorts of things. So the Indian, application processing team, job application processing team, well, look, none of the white applicants that applied qualified. Not a single one, no one. But we've got these Indian people that can do the job, and what we need to do is arrange a short-term temporary work visa for them, which we can then later convert into the equivalent in the American, the H-1B, the skilled work visa, and just roll that visa over and over till eventually we can get a permanent visa situation, or a long-term work residency visa, 3-year residency work visa. Now, sometimes they'll use this thing of bringing them out because they're a student while they're doing this important work they're going to study and that sort of stuff. And they just enroll them under 3 or 4 different names. So if there is a limitation on the hours they're supposed to be working, they can get, they can come in under multiple names. Also, what they do is they arrange with the local family in India to say, look, we'll pay part of your salary to your family in India, and then you get part of your salary paid to you in Australia or America. So there's all sorts of scams and bribery and corruption and perversion and subversion going on in this entire process. But the purpose of the exercise is to make sure that local white people don't get those jobs, and those jobs are effectively corralled off and given to Indians through backdoor and, again, corrupt arrangements. And this is quite a big thing. So I came across an organisation where they started this thing of again, it's done without the applicant's knowledge. All your applications will be sent to India for an Indian processing team, an Indian evaluation team, and so that would have a very negative effect on the whole thing, and would probably raise eyebrows and even encourage some sort of investigation, maybe, and maybe unfavourable media coverage, things like that. So they don't want that. So they just don't say it. It's secret. It's done secretly. You don't know it's being sent offshore to India, or it's unknown to you. So as a job applicant, I mean, so that goes off to India, and the whole thing is an arrangement, a pre-arranged arrangement, to make sure that Indians are inserted into these roles. And it's not that once you've got that structure in place, it's not that hard to do. The assumption of good faith and goodwill and honesty and this sort of thing is assumed to be there, at least a degree of it. But you don't know when you send in your CV to this, from the advert on the job boards, you don't know that in fact the entire process has been corrupted and subverted and exists only to ensure that Indians are getting these jobs. This is particularly noticeable, say, in IT and related. But looking at an organisation that, say, 6 months or so ago went to this corrupt arrangement of hiring and recruiting, since then, pretty much everyone who's been hired is Indian, and they're coming in on these short-term work visas and being inserted in there. So a very corrupt thing. And so the behaviour and attitudes of the basket case corrupt country like India, and so on, is being just exported to the West en masse. And it's a terrible thing. And it's dragging us all down in the process. We're not benefiting one. They're benefiting. The Indians that come to the West, who are gagging to come to the West and desperate to get the fuck out of India, they're benefiting. No one else is. No one, and the people that get the corrupt under the table payments, but no one else is. The West is not benefiting one whit from this arrangement. But I don't know how widespread it is. It must be quite widespread. But how far it's gone, I don't know. I sense it's something fairly new, and I think it may be a response in overall structural terms to Trump's clamp down on H-1B visas, the so-called skilled, again, hugely corrupted scheme, the skilled work visas for coming into the United States, because they were, millions of those people coming in are all Indians. So that idea of the Indians sort of coming back, the corrupt structure they're around, well, what are we going to do to kind of offset that? I know, why don't we do this? And they've managed to, and again, the companies that they've managed to rope into this, I don't know who in the chicken and egg scenario, was that the venture capital firms went to the Indians and said, let's do this corrupt thing. That's just as possible as if it was happening the other way around, where the Indians went to the venture capital firms. But anywhere in these IT firms where they've got, BlackRock type venture capital backing, then it's those companies that are particularly involved in this, and that's something I think it needs to be clamped down on. But it's just yet another demonstration of the degradation and corruption that all this mass immigration has brought to the West. It adds no value whatsoever, but subtracts a great deal of value. You've been with Tacitus today. You've pushed back channel, and thank you for listening.